Day 4. I think it's day 4. It's hard to tell. My watch says it's 2 p.m. 2 p.m. It used to be the brightest part of the day. The time when the sun would bounce off the snowpack so hard you'd go blind without polarized goggles. Now, I can't see my own hand in front of my face unless I turn on the red emergency lamp. If anyone is picking up this transmission, my name is Dr. Aris Thorne. I was, the lead researcher at Zenith Peak. I am currently barricaded in the primary telescope dome. The heater gave out 3 hours ago. The internal temperature is -20 degrees Celsius and dropping. I don't have much battery left on the recorder, but I need to document how it started. I need to put it on the record that we didn't miss anything. The models were correct. The math was perfect. The sun didn't die naturally. It was murdered. Let's go back. Let's go back to the last morning of the world. It was Tuesday, October 12th. Up here, at 14,000 feet, the air is thin. You have to move slowly. You drink a lot of coffee, and you stare at screens. My job was simple. Monitor coronal mass ejections. I was the weatherman for solar storms. I remember I was listening to old jazz. Coltrane. It helps with the isolation. The shift was ending. It was 5:45 a.m. local time. Sunrise was scheduled for 6:12 a.m. I loved the sunrise. It's the only reason I took this posting. You see the green flash up here sometimes. That split second where the refraction of the atmosphere turns the first sliver of the sun emerald green. It's magic. I grabbed my mug and walked out onto the catwalk. The sky was that deep, bruised purple you get right before dawn. The stars were fading. The eastern horizon had that faint halo of gold, promising the day. I stood there, breathing in the freezing mountain air, waiting for the light. 6 a.m. The halo got brighter. The birds, we have these mountain choughs, little black birds, they started chirping. They knew it was time. 6:10 a.m. I checked my watch. 2 minutes. I leaned against the railing. I was thinking about breakfast. I was thinking about emailing my sister in London. 6:12 a.m. I looked at the horizon. Nothing. I frowned. I tapped my watch. Maybe I was fast. No, it's an atomic sync watch. It's never wrong. Maybe there were clouds. I looked east. No, the horizon was sharp as a knife. I could see the silhouette of the jagged peaks against the lightning sky. Wait. I squinted. The sky wasn't lightning anymore. Usually, dawn is a progression. Purple, blue, gold, white. A crescendo. But as I watched, the gold rim on the horizon didn't expand. It faded. It was like someone was slowly turning a dimmer switch down. The purple deepened back into indigo. The indigo bled back into black. The birds stopped chirping. It was instant. 1 second, a chorus of tweets. The next, absolute silence. They knew. 6:15 a.m. It should have been bright enough to read a book. Instead, the stars were popping back into view. Brighter than before. Harder. I felt a pit open in my stomach. A primal, lizard brain panic. I ran back inside the control room. "Computer," I yelled. "Status report on the solar feed." The monitors were wall-to-wall red. "Signal lost," the screen flashed. "Probe Helios 4. No connection." "Probe Parker. No connection." I tried to pull up the visual feed from the orbital satellites. Static. No, not static. Black. I grabbed the phone. The hardline to NASA JPL in California. It rang, and rang, and rang. Finally, someone picked up. It wasn't the operator. It sounded like a room full of people screaming. JPL report. I shouted. My sensors are dead. I have no visual on the sunrise. What is the telemetry? A voice came on the line. It was Dr. Evans. He sounded drunk, or in shock. It's gone, Aris, he whispered. What's gone? The feed. The star, Evans said. It's not there. The gravity wells are still active. The Earth is still orbiting. But the light, the photons, they just stopped. That's physically impossible, I snapped. Stars don't just turn off. Even if it collapsed, there would be a supernova. We'd be vaporized. I'm looking at the data, Aris, he screamed, his voice cracking. It's reading 0 Kelvin at the source. 0. Absolute 0. Something is wrapping it. The line went dead. I dropped the phone. I walked back to the window. It was 6:30 a.m. It should have been broad daylight. Instead, the sky was a perfect, crushing abyss. The Milky Way stretched overhead, indifferent and cold. And then, the temperature started to drop. The observatory is designed for cold. We have insulation, but we are designed for night cold, followed by day heat. The building relies on solar gain during the day to recharge the thermal mass. I watched the digital thermometer on the wall. It was 20 degrees Fahrenheit when I went out. 6:45 a.m. 15 degrees Fahrenheit. 7 a.m. 5 degrees Fahrenheit. 7:30 a.m. -10 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind picked up. This wasn't normal wind. This was the atmosphere collapsing. As the day side of the Earth cooled rapidly, the pressure differential between the equator and the poles was going haywire. Massive storms were forming in the dark. I needed to secure the facility. I ran to the generator shed. We had diesel backups. Enough for a week, maybe 2 if I rationed it. I yanked the starter cord. The generator roared to life. The lights in the facility flickered and steadied. Artificial light. Yellow, buzzing, sickly electric light. It was the only light left in the universe. I sat in the control room, wrapped in my parka, refreshing the news feeds on the satellite internet before the bandwidth died. The headlines were a cascade of madness. Dawn fails to arrive in Europe. Mass panic in New York. Power grid failure imminent. Then, the live streams started dying. One by one. Tokyo went offline. Then Sydney. I found a feed from a traffic camera in London. Piccadilly Circus. The giant screens were the only light source, casting eerie blue shadows on the crowd. People were frozen, staring at the sky. Some were looting. Some were praying. Then the camera frosted over. Literally. I watched white fractals of ice crawl across the lens until the image turned grey, then black. The internet died at 8:15 a.m. I was alone. The first night, or I guess the only night, was a waiting game. I waited for the heat death. I waited for the gravity to fail and for us to drift into the void. But Evans was right. We were still orbiting something. The mass was there. The heat was not. By noon, what should have been noon, the outside temperature was -40 degrees. The structural groans of the observatory began. Steel contracts when it gets cold. The rivets were popping like gunshots. Bang, bang, echoing through the empty corridors. I spent the first 12 hours checking the seals on the doors. I taped up the vents. I moved my supplies, canned beans, dried fruit, the office water cooler, into the central server room. The servers generate heat. It was the warmest room in the building. I tried to sleep around 8 p.m. I couldn't. It wasn't just the cold. It was the sensation of being watched. You have to understand, observatories are essentially glass eyes looking into the dark. We have huge windows, skylights, domes. I was sitting in the server room, huddled in my sleeping bag, when I heard it. Scritch. It came from the roof. The main dome. I froze. The wind was howling outside, a banshee scream of 80-mile-per-hour gusts. But this sound was distinct. It was the sound of something hard dragging across the Teflon coating of the dome. Scritch. Thump. Something had landed on the roof. I told myself it was debris. A branch. Ice falling from the radio tower. But then I saw the shadow. The server room has a small skylight. I looked up. The security floodlights outside were still on, cutting a cone of yellow light through the falling snow. Wait, not snow. It was air. The air was freezing. It was nitrogen snow. In the beam of the floodlight, something moved. It was big. It moved like a spider, but it had the bulk of a bear. It scuttled across the glass of the skylight, blocking the light for a second. I saw limbs. Too many limbs. Pale, translucent, gelatinous limbs. It looked like something you'd find at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Something that evolved to survive in crushing pressure and total darkness. And then I realized, the atmosphere is cooling. The pressure is dropping. The surface of the Earth is becoming their environment. I grabbed the only weapon I had, a flare gun from the emergency survival kit. I aimed it at the skylight. My hand was shaking. The creature stopped. It was sitting right on top of the glass. I couldn't see its face. I could just see the pulsing, bioluminescent organs inside its translucent skin. Blue, purple, rhythmically flashing. It was tapping on the glass. Tap, 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 testing the strength. I held my breath. I didn't want to make a sound. Suddenly, the generator sputtered. The hum of the servers dropped an octave. The lights dimmed. The creature reacted to the change in frequency. It hissed. I could hear it through the glass, and skittered away into the dark. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I checked the fuel gauge on the remote panel. 15%. That wasn't right. I had filled the tank. It should have lasted a week. I grabbed my flashlight and put on my thermal mask. I had to go to the generator shed. I had to see why we were bleeding fuel. I stepped out of the server room into the hallway. The cold hit me like a physical blow. The moisture in my eyes froze instantly, gluing my eyelashes together. I walked down the corridor toward the rear exit. The walls were covered in frost. I reached the back door. I pushed the panic bar. It was frozen shut. I slammed my shoulder into it. Once, twice. Crack. The ice broke. The door swung open. The wind knocked me down immediately. It was a hurricane of ice. I crawled toward the generator shed, shielding my eyes. The floodlights were flickering, dying. I reached the shed. The door was ripped off its hinges. I shone my light inside. The fuel tank wasn't leaking. It had been punctured. Great, jagged holes had been torn into the metal. And the diesel. It wasn't just spilled. It was gone. Something had drunk it. Something that feeds on chemical energy because there is no solar energy left. I stared at the ruined tank. The generator sputtered one last time and died. The floodlights cut out. The server room lights cut out. Total, absolute, black. I was outside, in -50-degree weather, in pitch darkness, with creatures that drink rocket fuel. I scrambled back toward the main building. I felt my way along the wall. I heard the skittering again. Close. On the ground with me. I fumbled for the door. I fell inside and slammed it shut, wedging a chair under the handle. That was 20 minutes ago. I am in the dark. I am in the cold. And I can hear them in the ventilation shafts. They are coming for the heat. They are coming for me. Entry. Entry 5. Or maybe 6. The cold. It's heavy. You don't think of cold as having weight, do you? You think of it as an absence. The absence of heat. But when it gets to 40 below zero inside a building, it presses on you. It sits on your chest like a bag of wet cement. I had to move. The server room wasn't safe. The heat from the machines dissipated about 20 minutes after the power died. And once the heat was gone, it came down from the ceiling. I'm currently in the sub-basement. The old wing. It was built in the 60s. Dug straight into the granite of the mountain. It's deeper. The earth insulates it better than the steel dome up top. It's maybe 10 below down here. Balmy. God, my lungs hurt. Every breath crystallizes the moisture in my alveoli. I'm literally frosting my insides. Let me tell you how I got here. Because if you're listening to this, you need to know how to move. You need to know how they see. I was in the server room. The generator had just died. I was sitting in the dark, clutching that flare gun like a religious icon. I heard the vent above the main server rack start to buckle. Creak. Pop. The screws sheared off. Metal fatigue from the cold, combined with whatever that thing weighs. The grate fell. It hit the floor with a crash that sounded like a bomb going off in the silent room. I didn't turn on my light. I knew better. I pressed myself into the gap between two server towers, curling into a ball. I heard it land. It didn't land like an animal. It landed like a bag of wet jelly. Slap. Heavy. Viscous. Then came the smell. Ammonia. Concentrated, eye-watering ammonia. And something else. Ozone. Like the smell of a lightning strike. These things, they aren't carbon-based like us. Or if they are, they've been mutated by high-pressure environments. They smell like chemical batteries leaking acid. I listened to it move. It was slithering over the warm server racks, hunting for the residual heat. Hiss. Slorp. It was licking the metal. It was feeding on the last few joules of thermal energy left in the heat sinks. I realized then that I was the hottest thing in the room. My body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. In a room that was rapidly approaching zero, I was glowing like a lighthouse. I had to lower my thermal signature. I did the only thing I could think of. I unzipped my parka. It was suicide logic. But I pulled the zipper down. I exposed my chest, my neck, my thermal undershirt to the freezing air. I grabbed a can of compressed air, the kind used for cleaning keyboards, from the desk next to me. I held it upside down. You know what happens when you spray compressed air upside down? It shoots out liquid fluorocarbons. Freezing liquid. I sprayed it on my clothes, on my outer shell, on the floor around me. The cold was agonizing. It felt like I was being set on fire. But it worked. The creature paused. It chittered, a sound like grinding rocks, and moved past my hiding spot. It couldn't distinguish me from the freezing air I had created. I waited until I heard it climb up the server rack on the far side of the room. Then I crawled. I crawled on my belly, inch by inch, out the door. The hallway was the worst part. The observatory is a maze of corridors. In the light, it's a sterile, scientific workplace. In the dark, it's a tomb. I couldn't see the walls. I couldn't see the floor. I had to navigate by memory and touch. I reached out with my gloved hand. The wall was covered in rime ice. Sharp, jagged crystals that snagged my glove. I counted my steps. 1, 2, 3. doorway to the break room. I needed supplies. The break room had the emergency medical kit and the chemical hand warmers. If I was going to survive in the sub-basement, I needed portable heat that didn't give off light. I turned left. The break room smelled of rot. The refrigerator had died, but it hadn't frozen yet. The milk had gone bad instantly in the weird pressure shifts. I fumbled around in the dark until my hand hit the plastic casing of the first aid box on the wall. I ripped it down. I found the chemical packs. Snap to heat. I shoved 4 of them into my pockets, but I didn't snap them yet. Not until I was deep underground. I was turning to leave when I saw it. Through the large bay window of the break room, I saw the sky. The clouds had cleared. The storm had blown itself out, leaving the atmosphere stripped and naked. And the stars. I stopped. I forgot the cold. I forgot the monsters. The stars were wrong. I'm an astronomer. I know the constellations better than I know the lines on my own palm. I know where Orion should be. I know where Cassiopeia sits. They weren't there. The stars had moved. Or new ones had arrived. Great ribbons of bioluminescent light were drifting between the stars. Nebulas? No. They were moving too fast. They were winding through the void like eels in a dark river. And the colors? Colors I don't have names for. Colors that hurt to look at, existing on the very edge of the UV spectrum. The universe wasn't empty. It was teeming. The sun had been the only thing keeping them away. The solar wind, the radiation pressure. It was a fence. And the fence was down. I stood there, mesmerized, watching a ribbon of impossible light coil around the planet Jupiter, which was shining like a beacon in the dark. Then, the window cracked. It wasn't a creature. It was the thermal stress. The glass was rated for high wind, not absolute zero. Crack ping. A spiderweb fracture shot across the pane. The sound snapped me out of my trance. I realized I was standing in front of a window, exposed. If those things in the sky could look down. I dropped to the floor and scrambled into the hallway. I headed for the stairwell to the old wing. The stairs are concrete. Spiral. Going down 3 flights into the mountain. I started down. My knees were locking up. The fluid in my joints was thickening. The umbles were setting in. Stumbles. Mumbles. Just keep moving. Aris, I whispered. My voice sounded loud. Too loud. I reached the bottom landing. The heavy blast door of the old wing. It was locked. Electronic keypad. The power was out. The keypad was dead. I stared at it in the dark. I wanted to cry, but my tear ducts were frozen. Think, I hissed. Think, you idiot. Analog overrides. The old wing was built in the 60s. Cold War tech. They didn't trust computers. There had to be a mechanical release. I ran my hands over the frame of the door. Nothing. I felt the floor. Nothing. Then I remembered. The fire panel. I moved to the wall adjacent to the door. I found the recessed panel. I used the butt of the flare gun to smash the glass cover. Smash. I felt inside. A lever. A heavy, iron lever painted red, I assumed. I pulled it. Nothing happened. The grease in the mechanism had frozen. I put both feet against the wall, grabbed the lever with both hands, and screamed. Move! The lever gave way. Clunk. The blast door groaned. It drifted open about 6 inches. I squeezed through the gap. I fell onto the floor on the other side. The air here was stale, dusty, but it was warmer. I could feel it instantly. The geothermal mass of the mountain was bleeding heat into the room. It was probably 20 degrees in here. Compared to the hallway, it felt like a sauna. I pushed the door shut from the inside and engaged the manual deadbolt. I was safe. For now. I sat in the dark, my back against the cold steel door. I took out one of the chemical heat packs. I snapped it. I felt the warmth spread through the plastic. I held it against my nose, against my ears. The pain of the blood returning to the capillaries was blinding. I almost passed out. Once I could feel my fingers again, I turned on my red emergency light, just for a second, to see where I was. The old wing was storage, crates of old telescopic lenses, filing cabinets full of paper charts from the 80s, and in the corner, a radio setup, a ham radio base station, the old kind, vacuum tubes. I scrambled over to it. It looked intact. It was plugged into a wall outlet, which was dead, obviously. But these old units, sometimes they had auxiliary inputs. I looked at the back. Yes, a 12-volt DC input. Car battery terminals. I looked around the room. There was an emergency lighting unit on the wall, the kind that kicks in when power fails. It had a lead-acid battery inside. I ripped the unit off the wall. I smashed the plastic casing. I pulled out the battery. I stripped some wire from a desk lamp using my teeth. I connected the battery to the radio. The tubes glowed. A faint, orange warmth. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I put the headset on. I spun the dial. 7.000 megahertz. Static. 14.000 megahertz. Static. But it wasn't empty static. It was wet. It sounded like the ocean. I kept spinning. Then, at 10.550 megahertz, a voice. It was faint, buried under layers of atmospheric noise and the magnetic interference of the aurora. Repeat. Sector 4 is dark. Static. Do not go to the surface. Static. They are attracted to the static light. I grabbed the microphone. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped it. Hello. This is Station Zenith. Can you hear me? Silence. Then, the voice came back. Clearer. Zenith? My God. Is someone up there? It was a woman's voice. British accent. Professional, but terrified. I'm here, I said. Dr. Thorne. I'm in the sub-basement. Who is this? This is Commander Sharp, the voice said. Submarine HMS Vanguard. We are currently submerged at 400 feet in the North Atlantic. A submarine. Of course. Nuclear power. They have heat. They have air. Commander, I said. What is happening? Is the sun? Is it gone? There was a pause. A long pause. Dr. Thorne, she said. The sun isn't gone. We're getting sonar readings from the surface. The water is freezing, but the ice is transparent enough for our sensors. What do you mean? I asked. There is something between us and the sun, she said. A Dyson swarm. Or a cloud. It arrived in 8 minutes. It wrapped the earth. She took a breath. But Dr. Thorne, we're detecting signals coming from the swarm. Directed signals. Aimed at the major population centers. What kind of signals? "They aren't radio," she whispered. "They're audio. High-frequency acoustic waves being blasted into the atmosphere." I froze. "Acoustic? Yes. They're singing, Doctor. They're singing to the things that were sleeping in the earth." I cut the feed. I had to save the battery. She said they are singing. I'm sitting here in the dark, under a mountain of rock, and I'm listening, not to the radio, but to the rock itself, because if she's right, and things are waking up in the earth, then I am not safe in the basement. I can hear it now, a low vibration coming from the floor. Thrum, thrum, thrum. Something is digging, and it's coming up from below. I have to move. Higher. I have to go to the roof. It's the only way out. I learned something today. Rock screams when it breaks. I am back in the stairwell. I'm climbing up. I had to leave the radio. I had to leave the warmth. The sub-basement is gone. I didn't see what did it. I only heard it. 10 minutes after I spoke to Commander Sharp, the floor of the old wing buckled. It didn't cave in. It bowed upward. The concrete foundation, 3 feet of reinforced slab, pushed up like a blister. And the heat. I thought the creatures from below would be cold. I thought they were like the things in the sky. But the thing digging beneath the observatory, it was radiating heat. Not life heat. Volcanic heat. The smell of sulfur filled the room instantly. The air shimmered. I realized then, they aren't just waking up. They are terraforming. Or xenoforming. They are melting the crust from the underside to release the gases they need. I ran. I unbolted the door and scrambled back into the spiral stairwell just as the back wall of the old wing exploded into a shower of magma and rubble. So now I am climbing. My legs are numb. I can't feel my feet. I'm just lifting my knees by mechanical willpower. Lift. Plant. Lift. Plant. I have a destination now. The radio telescope. The Big Ear. It's on a detached platform, connected to the main building by an elevated skybridge on the 3rd floor. It has its own independent power supply, a radioisotope thermoelectric generator, RTG. Nuclear battery. It's designed to run for 50 years without maintenance. If the RTG is still active, there is heat, and there is a transmitter. If I can reach the Big Ear, I can boost the signal from the submarine. I can broadcast the warning to anyone left with a radio. But first, I have to get through the atrium. I reached the top of the stairs. The door to the main level was open. I stepped out into the atrium. It used to be the centerpiece of the facility, a 3-story open space with a glass ceiling, filled with potted plants, educational displays, a replica of the Galileo probe. Now, it is an alien landscape. The glass ceiling has shattered. The floor is covered in a snowdrift 3 feet deep. But it's not white. It's blue. The moonlight, no, the starlight, is reflecting off the strange particulate in the air. And the plants, the ficus trees, the ferns, they aren't dead. I shined my red light on the nearest tree. The leaves were gone. In their place, the branches were covered in a translucent, slimy webbing. It looked like spun glass. And inside the webbing, things were moving. Tiny, pale insects? No, not insects. Parasites. They were eating the wood, converting the cellulose into something else. The tree was pulsing. A faint, rhythmic bioluminescence. Thump thump, thump thump. The dark biosphere is already rewriting the biology of the surface. I moved through the snow. It was dry, like walking through sand. I needed to cross the atrium to get to the skybridge access. That's when I heard the singing. Commander Sharp warned me. She said they were broadcasting acoustic signals. She didn't tell me it would sound like a choir of angels. It hit me in the center of the atrium. It wasn't coming from a speaker. It was coming from the air itself. The molecules were vibrating. I fell to my knees. The sound wasn't just noise. It was memory. As I listened, I stopped feeling the cold. The pain in my lungs vanished. I closed my eyes. I saw the sun. I saw a field of wheat in Kansas. Golden. Warm. I could smell the baking bread. I could feel the heat on the back of my neck. I saw my mother standing on the porch, waving at me. "Aris," she called. "Come inside. It's warm." I smiled. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to lay down in the snow, which wasn't snow, it was wheat, and sleep. "Lie down," the voice in my head whispered. "The cold is a lie. The dark is a blanket." My hand relaxed. The flare gun slipped from my grip. I started to lean forward, face first into the blue drift. Clang. The flare gun hit the floor. The sound broke the spell. Just for a microsecond. The sharp, metallic noise cut through the harmonic song. I blinked. The wheat field vanished. My mother vanished. I was on my knees in a freezing ruin, and standing 10 feet in front of me was not my mother. It was a statue. It was Dr. Evans, my colleague, the man I spoke to on the phone. He must have tried to make it to the observatory from the lower dormitories. He was standing perfectly still in the middle of the room. His arms were outstretched, like he was embracing someone. His head was tilted back, mouth open in a rictus of ecstasy. But he wasn't flesh anymore. He was covered in the same translucent webbing as the trees. The glass frost had grown over his eyes, over his mouth, down his throat, and inside his chest cavity. There was a light. A blue, pulsing organ had grown inside his rib cage. It was beating in time with the song. He was the speaker. The parasites had hollowed him out and turned him into a biological repeater. He was broadcasting the hallucination signal. I stared at him. The horror was absolute. It wasn't just death. It was utilization. The song swelled again. The urge to sleep returned, heavier this time. "Join him," the voice whispered. Asterisk become the signal. Asterisk. "No," I grunted. I bit my tongue. Hard. I tasted copper. The pain grounded me. I grabbed the flare gun from the snow. "I am a physicist," I whispered. "And you are a variable." I aimed at the blue light in his chest. Thump. The flare gun fired. The flare hit Dr. Evans in the sternum. Magnesium burns at 4,000 degrees. The webbing ignited instantly. The glass, frost shattered. The blue organ inside his chest didn't just burn. It exploded. A shriek tore through the room. Not from Evans, he was long dead, but from the parasites inside him. The song cut out abruptly. Silence crashed back into the room. The hallucination ended. The cold returned, sharper than before. I scrambled to my feet. I didn't look back at the burning husk of my friend. I ran for the skybridge door. I hit the crash bar and fell into the corridor. I was hyperventilating. The air was getting thinner. I was at 14,000 feet. The pressure was dropping, and I was running on adrenaline and terror. I reached the access door to the skybridge. This was the dangerous part. The skybridge is a steel walkway, suspended 50 feet in the air, connecting the main building to the telescope platform. It has walls, but they are uninsulated aluminum. It would be the coldest point of the journey. I checked my thermometer. -65 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, exposed skin freezes in less than a minute. The rubber soles of my boots were becoming brittle. I opened the door. The bridge was a tunnel of ice. The wind outside was battering it, making the whole structure groan and twist. I started to cross. It's about 100 feet long. Step. Slide. Step. Slide. The windows of the bridge were frosted over, but I could see shapes moving outside. The flyers. They were swarming around the radio telescope dish ahead. They looked like manta rays made of oil, gliding on the thermal currents. Why were they interested in the dish? Then I saw it. The RTG unit on the platform. The nuclear battery. It radiates heat. They were huddled around the generator housing, like moths around a light bulb. There were dozens of them, covering the platform, blocking the door to the control room. I stopped in the middle of the bridge. I couldn't go forward. There was a wall of monsters. I couldn't go back. The atrium was compromised. I was trapped in a swaying metal tube. Then, I felt the vibration again. Thrum. Thrum. Not from the floor. From my pocket. The recorder? No. The HAM radio battery I had salvaged. I still had it in my pack. And then I realized, the skybridge isn't just a walkway. It carries the data cables. Massive bundles of copper and fiber optic cables running from the dish to the server room. The cables ran along the ceiling of the bridge. I looked up. A service panel was hanging loose. I saw the heavy, shielded coaxial cables. An idea formed. A stupid, desperate, engineering idea. The creatures are attracted to heat, but they are also sensitive to electromagnetic fields. That's how they navigate. That's why they found the RTG. I had a DC battery, and I had a flare gun with no flares. But the flare gun had a metal barrel. If I could short the main power conduit. The capacitor bank for the telescope motors was on this side of the bridge. Even with the generator down, the capacitors might hold a residual charge. Or, if I could bridge the battery to the shield ground, I could create an EMP, a localized, magnetic pulse. It wouldn't kill them, but it might blind them. It might scatter them long enough for me to run. I put the recorder down on the floor. If this works, I muttered, I'm going to ruin a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment. If it doesn't work, well, I won't be around to fill out the paperwork. I dragged a bench over. I climbed up. I used my knife to strip the insulation off the main conduit. The copper was thick, cold. I took the lead-acid battery out of my pack. I wrapped the positive wire around the barrel of the empty flare gun. I wrapped the negative wire around the conduit. I took a deep breath. For science, I whispered. I jammed the barrel of the flare gun into the exposed copper core of the cable. Aris here. I'm alive. I think I broke my arm. The backlash. It threw me 10 feet. But it worked. I looked out the window. The platform is clear. The creatures are gone, scattered into the sky, shrieking. The pulse messed with their navigation. The door to the telescope control room is open. I can see the light of the RTG indicator. Green. Power. Heat. Transmitter. I'm going to make the run. If I reach that console, I can turn the dish. I can point it away from the stars. I can point it at the Earth. I want to hear what the planet is singing. I'm in. The control room is small. It's warm. The RTG is humming. I'm sitting at the console. I'm powering up the receiver. Commander Sharp, if you're listening, get ready. I'm turning the big ear around. We're going to listen to the dirt. Wait. The monitor. It's not showing a signal from the Earth. It's picking up a signal from inside the room. Hello. I didn't turn around immediately. I looked at the reflection in the monitor. The control room is small, circular. Banks of servers on the left, the main telescope controls on the right, and the RTG housing in the center, radiating that beautiful, life-saving waste heat. In the reflection, I saw a shape huddled against the RTG. Director Vance? I whispered. The shape moved. It uncoiled. It was Vance. He was wearing his lab coat, but he wasn't wearing his thermal gear. He was barefoot. Aris, he croaked. His voice sounded like dry leaves sliding on pavement. You made it. I didn't think you had the fortitude. I spun the chair around. Vance was smiling, but his eyes were gone. In their place were two pools of that same bioluminescent blue fluid I saw in Dr. Evans. And his hands. He was hugging the generator housing. His skin had melted. Literally. The radiation and the heat had fused his flesh to the metal casing of the nuclear battery. He wasn't just near the heat. He had become part of the circuit. Director, I said, standing up slowly. My hand hovered over the flare gun on my belt. It was empty, but he didn't know that. We need to transmit. I have a contact. A submarine. We can warn the survivors. Vance laughed. A wet, bubbling sound. Warn them. He tilted his head. Warn them about what? The cold. The cold is a gift, Aris. It slows things down. It preserves. He pulled one hand off the generator. It made a sound like tearing Velcro. Beneath the skin, I saw wires. Not copper wires. Biological filaments. The parasites had rewired his nervous system to feed off the RTG. Don't touch the console, Aris, he said. The song. It hurts them. It disrupts the hatching. The hatching. I took a step back. What are you talking about? Vance pointed a flayed finger at the ceiling. At the sky. The sun didn't go out, he whispered. It was covered. A membrane. A shell. To keep the heat in. He looked at me with those glowing blue sockets. The Earth isn't dying, Aris. It's being incubated. The things in the sky. The things in the ground. They aren't invaders. They're the immune system. And we are the fever. I looked at the console. I looked at Vance. He was the node. Just like Evans. But stronger. He was guarding the transmitter. I'm sorry, Director, I said. I grabbed the heavy fire extinguisher from the wall mount. Vance screamed. A sonic shriek that shattered the light bulbs in the room. He lunged at me, dragging the cables of his fused nervous system with him. I didn't hesitate. I swung the extinguisher. Clang. It hit him in the head. He went down, but he didn't stop. He clawed at my legs. His touch burned. He was radiating heat like an oven. I kicked him. Hard. In the chest. I heard ribs crack. I kicked him again, driving him back against the generator. Stay down. I yelled. I turned to the console. I locked the door controls. I typed in the command sequence. Target: Nadir via azimuth 180. Source: active listening. The floor vibrated. The massive gears of the radio telescope outside began to groan. The dish, which had been staring at the silent stars for 20 years, began to tilt down toward the horizon, down toward the frozen ocean, down toward the crust. "Come on," I muttered. "Give me the signal." The monitor spiked. The big ear was picking up the audio frequency of the planet. It wasn't a song. Not anymore. It was a heartbeat. Thump, thump. It was slow, massive, geologic, and overlaid on top of it was a screeching data stream. The command code Commander Sharp talked about. I grabbed the headset. I patched into the VLF, very low frequency, band. "Commander Sharp, this is Zenith. Do you copy? Static." Then, "Aris, we hear it. My God, the signal strength. You're boosting the entire spectrum." "I'm pointing the dish at the ground," I shouted over the noise. "I'm feeding you the raw data from the lithosphere. Analyze it. What are they saying?" There was a pause. The sound of rapid typing on her end. It's a sequence," Sharp said, her voice trembling. "It's genetic instructions. Aris, they're triggering a metamorphosis. The DNA of every living thing on the surface. It's being rewritten to survive in the cold." "The statues," I whispered. "They aren't dead. They're chrysalises." "Yes," Sharp said, "but the process. It requires the host to be totally frozen. Aris, if you stay warm, they will hunt you. You have to hide. You have to go deep." Crash. I spun around. Vance wasn't on the floor. He was standing by the window. He had smashed the emergency beacon switch. A bright, strobing white light began to flash on top of the tower. "They see the light," Vance gurgled. He was slumped against the glass, bleeding blue fluid. "They are coming to turn it off." I looked out the window. The sky was alive. The strobing beacon illuminated the cloud layer. It was thick with the flyers. Hundreds of them, drawn by the light, drawn by the active transmission. They dove. Smash. The first one hit the reinforced glass of the control room. It bounced off, leaving a smear of black oil. Smash. Another one. The glass spider-webbed. "Sharp!" I yelled into the mic. "I can't hold the position. They're attacking the tower. Aris, keep transmitting." Sharp screamed. "We need 2 more minutes to isolate the kill frequency. If we can broadcast the inverse signal, we might be able to disrupt the command code. We can stop the hatching. 2 minutes." I looked at the glass. It was cracking under the assault. I looked at the door. I could hear thumping on the other side. The statues from the lower levels. They had climbed the stairs. They were banging on the steel door. I was trapped in a glass box at the top of the world. I looked at the fire extinguisher. I looked at the console. I made a choice. I grabbed the heavy desk chair and wedged it under the door handle. Then I ran to the RTG. It was hot. Blistering hot. I grabbed the emergency coolant release valve. If I dumped the coolant, the RTG would go critical. It wouldn't explode like a bomb, but it would release a massive thermal pulse. It would melt the antenna. It would fry the electronics. But it would give Sharp her 2 minutes. The flyers would swarm the heat source. They would ignore the dish for just long enough. "Vance," I said, "you wanted the heat. You can have it. Vance looked at me. For a second, the blue light in his eyes faded. I saw a flicker of the man he used to be. It is beautiful, he whispered. Smash. The main window shattered. The cold rushed in. It was absolute. Instantly, the papers on the desk froze and shattered. The air turned to white fog. A flyer squeezed through the broken window. It unfolded its wings, 10 feet of translucent skin. It screeched at me. I pulled the coolant valve. The RTG flared. The room turned white hot. The flyer burst into flames. It thrashed, knocking over the servers. I fell to the floor, shielding my eyes. The heat was unbearable. My skin was blistering. Sharp. I screamed into the headset. Do you have it? 90%, she yelled. Aris, the signal is degrading. The tower is melting. Just take it. I crawled under the console. The heat above me was melting the plastic casing. I watched the progress bar on the screen. 95%. 98%. The door behind me buckled. The statues broke in. They walked into the inferno. They didn't care. They marched toward the console, their bodies burning, intent on stopping the signal. 99%. A hand grabbed my ankle. It was cold. Stone cold. I looked back. It was Evans. Or the thing that used to be Evans. He had climbed the tower. He was charred, half destroyed, but still moving. He dragged me out from under the console. I kicked at him, but my leg broke. I was too weak. He raised a fist to crush my skull. Ping. Upload complete. The screen flashed green. I laughed. A bloody, broken laugh. Sharp, I whispered. Hit play. The inverse signal blasted from the submarine, relayed through the satellite network, amplified by my dish. It hit the atmosphere. The effect was instant. Evans froze. The blue light in his chest flickered and died. He collapsed, turning back into lifeless stone. The flyers in the room screamed and fell from the air, twitching, their nervous systems scrambled. The hum of the hatching stopped. The heartbeat stopped. Silence returned to the mountain. But the heat from the RTG was fading. The core was spent. The cold rushed back in. I lay on the floor of the ruined control room. The wind howled through the broken windows. I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel my arms. I watched the frost crawl across the floor toward me. It was fast. Beautiful, crystalline fractals. I rolled onto my back. I looked up through the shattered roof. The sky was clearing. The swarm, the membrane, it was rippling. The signal had disrupted it. And through a tear in the dark fabric, I saw it. Just a sliver. A tiny, crescent sliver. The sun. It was faint, distant, but it was there. I keyed the mic one last time. Sharp, I whispered. My voice was fading. Do you see it? I see it, Aris, she was crying. We see the light. The sensors are picking up UV radiation. The membrane is dissolving. Good, I said. That's good. My eyes felt heavy. My breath was slowing down. The frost reached my chest. It didn't hurt anymore. It felt like falling asleep. Dr. Thorne. Sharp called. Aris, stay with me. I'm tired, Commander, I said. I think I'm going to wait for the sunrise. Aris, no. Don't close your eyes. I looked at the sliver of light. It was getting brighter. Or maybe I was just fading out. The cold embraced me. It stopped my heart. It preserved me. I am not dead. I am just static. I am the archive. This recording was recovered from the ruins of the Zenith Peak Observatory 3 months after the event. Dr. Aris Thorne is still up there. We found him in the control room. He is frozen. A perfect statue, looking up at the sky. The membrane is gone. The sun has returned. The ecology is healing, though the scars remain. We don't know if he can hear us. We don't know if the statues are truly dead, or just waiting for the next long night. But every morning, when the sun hits the peak, we think he smiles. This is Commander Sharp, United Earth Defense, signing off.